I'll call this meeting to order. This is the regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Cottonwood, Arizona, to be held February 4th, 2020 at 6 p.m. If we could please have the Deputy Clerk take the roll.
Councilmember Olin.
Wilden? Here. Is it Olden?
Sorry. Councilmember Hulse.
Here.
Councilmember Howergy.
Here.
Councilmember Naren.
Here.
Vice Mayor Matthews.
Here.
Mayor Linsky.
Here, thanks.
And Councilmember Henry is absent.
Okay, please stand and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next on the agenda is a brief summary of current events by the mayor, city council, and/or city manager. The public body does not propose, discuss, deliberate, or take legal action on any matter brought up during the summary unless the specific matter is properly noticed for legal action. Do we have any council members with anything to share?
I have one thing.
Sir?
I attended last Thursday. I had the opportunity and the pleasure of attending Sergeant Silvernagel's retirement. It's a hard name to spit out. I apologize. And it was very nice. He had a nice reception, and the city was nice enough to frame the picture of wet beaver or dry beaver creek that he tried to drive a patrol car through shortly after becoming a sergeant, I believe. Is that correct, Chief? That's correct. And he was a little surprised to receive his souvenir from the city. Other than that, it was a very nice event, and proud of him for his 21 years of service.
Very good. Councilmember Wilden, did you have something?
Just maybe what you might say.
What's that?
About the meeting you attended. No worries.
Go right ahead, please.
We had, in fact, there's a resident here of the Homeowners Association where I live, and the mayor was invited to speak. The mayor, yeah, and Rudy, and he did an excellent job. It was a very good meeting, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we got a lot of things out in the open, and it was a very positive meeting, and thank you, did an excellent job.
Great, good. I was happy to be there. Any other council members? No? So I did go to the meeting at Crestview. That was great. And right before then, I swung by the Cottonwood Sea to see if I could help paint it, but they had already gotten it done. So many thanks to the folks that did participate in repainting the Cottonwood Sea. Looks great, so thanks. Sorry I couldn't help. And then last week, I was able to testify in front of the House Transportation Committee to try to speak to them about the importance of HERF funding, what it means to us, Highway User Revenue Fund funds, which we use, of course, to improve our streets, roadways, and that sort of thing. So just try to impress upon them the need to work as partners, basically, and did let them know that we're doing everything we can up here in Cottonwood and Verde Valley to bring them as much sales tax revenue as we can with our wine industry, and we'd sure appreciate it if they would help scratch our backs as well with a little additional revenue. So don't know how far it went, but stood side by side with the mayor, German from Camp Verde, so we showed them that we're at least united up here in the Verde Valley. And that's all I have. Ron, did you have something?
I do have a couple. Rudy Rodriguez attended your guys' meeting with the HOA, so I just wanted to make sure. I heard the word Rudy, but the Deputy City Administrator filled in for me while I was out of town, so thank you, Rudy, to that. A couple things coming up are that I attended. Mayor, I didn't know if you wanted to talk about, we met at the Verde Front Leadership Council Strategic Planning up at the college. They were great hosts up there. The work being done on the river is awesome as a group, and all the mayors and the two supervisors for the Verde Valley were there and talking about the future of the Verde Front. I thought that was a great meeting. And then I attended the Yavapai Passenger Transportation Study Advisory Committee. So basically, Yavapai is looking at transportation Yavapai County-wide. And so they were on this side talking to a lot of stakeholders about transportation needs, everything from busing to Meals on Wheels to other volunteer organizations that provide transportation to doctor's appointments and those kinds of things. So it's an exciting study. We'll see where it leads us in the end. Bruce from our own transportation department was there also, but great little meeting. A couple reminders. The 2020 census is coming up April 1st. It is important that all residents participate in that. It has a significant impact on our revenue and what we're able to do in the community. It impacts our ability to get grants and to do things in our community. There will be a big push coming up very soon in both English and Spanish to make sure that everybody is counted and that we're represented appropriately. It has a 10-year impact on resources, everything from libraries to roads. It's important. Do your census, fill it out, please.
I understand it's about $3,000 a head. Is that correct?
I think that is a number I've heard. Morgan or? Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So it makes an impact.
Right.
Look around. This month's rotating artist exhibit is by Rich Poling, The Art of Altered Images. His work is focused on contemporary landscapes and abstracts floral concepts created by a combination of both hand and digital painting skills. The reception will be held this coming Saturday from 4 to 7 here in the chambers. Also, another reminder, candidate packets are available from the city clerk's office to run for city's 2020 election. There are 4 council member and the mayor's seat that are open for election. And let me end with a call for volunteers. The Forest Service is holding a trail volunteer work day on February 8th from 9 to 1 to help construct the new Bullseye Trail number 557. This is a new trail about 2.66 miles long. Will be a section, and I added the about, not the people who wrote it, so thank you. Will be a section of a future 5-mile-long non-motorized loop in the Blowout Wash area. If you want to attend, please RSVP by Thursday to Michael Revel at 928-777-2216.
All right. Very good. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is call to the public. This portion of the agenda is set aside for the public to address the council regarding an item that is not listed on the agenda for discussion. However, the council cannot engage in discussion regarding any item that's not officially listed on the agenda, and we do limit folks to 5 minutes at the podium. So if you wish to speak to the council tonight about an item that's not on the agenda, there's yellow forms in the back. Please fill them out. So far, I've gotten 3. So we'll start in the order I received them with Mr. Ray Parsons. Evening.
Oh, hi. I'm Ray Parsons, and I'm a member of the Northern Arizona Climate Change Alliance. I'm nervous. We're a grassroots organization that started in Flagstaff several years ago. We educate and empower people to take action now against the negative impact of our planet's climate crisis. We are a nonpartisan, nonprofit, 501c3 organization. We bring this request to the Cottonwood City Council. We are here to present petitions signed by 768 people who know climate change is real and human caused. Climate change is a serious problem in Arizona that requires action on many fronts and political levels. We request that the Cottonwood City Council, number 1, declare a climate emergency, and 2nd, develop and implement a climate action plan for Cottonwood. We are in a human-caused climate emergency, an environmental crisis which demands unprecedented and immediate attention. The costs of climate change are very real. Monetary costs, environmental costs, and human suffering. Dealing with climate change can avoid these costs and at the same time create jobs, protect our environment, improve health and life, and raise household incomes. Global warming is happening everywhere on Earth. Scientists have determined that the warming is a result of human-produced carbon compounds and other greenhouse gases in the air. 97% of scientists agree. This is a chart that shows the temperature rise in red since the start of the Industrial Revolution. Carbon dioxide has increased in our air from an average of 230 parts per million from 800,000 years ago to over 410 parts per million recently. The carbon dioxide levels and temperatures have been pretty steady until the Industrial Revolution. However, recent data shows a trend of increasing temperature and rising carbon dioxide levels beginning in the early 19th century. This chart shows, if I get it right side up, this chart shows the global average temperature since then, along with the carbon dioxide in black. Temperatures in red, carbon dioxide in black. The most compelling climate change evidence scientists have is long-term data relating atmospheric carbon dioxide levels and global temperature, sea level, the expanse of ice, and the fossil record. This data from millions of years shows a very strong correlation between carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere and global average temperature. Other significant greenhouse gases in the atmosphere are methane, nitrous oxide, refrigerants, and sulfur hexafluoride. Black carbon microparticles produced by, for example, burning coal, fall out of the atmosphere onto snow, contributing to snow and polar ice cap melting. This is a big contributor to global warming. And there are many feedback loops which affect climate change, affect climate warming. For example, increased temperatures amplifying wildfires, causing an increase of carbon dioxide in the air, which then causes higher temperatures in the atmosphere. Also, melting permafrost releases both carbon dioxide and methane, increasing the Earth's temperature even more.
Mr. Parsons?
Because of the climate change
Mr. Parsons?
crisis that we are
I'm sorry to interrupt you, sir, but
we request,
sir, your 5 minutes is up. I'm really sorry.
one more sentence?
We'll give you one more sentence, but you need to wrap it up, sir. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. We try to be fair to all, so I gotta cut it short. My apologies. Okay, next up is Beverly Hedden.
Yes. Good evening.
When you hear that annoying beep, that'll be your cue. Okay. Thank you.
Well, I'm a Cottonwood resident. And as a Cottonwood resident, I'm very proud of with the city's commitment to maximize the efficient water use and reuse, and also promote the quality of life for its citizens. Developing a sustainability plan is a great step forward. However, science tells us that in Arizona, we are among the most vulnerable to the adverse impacts of climate change. The temperatures in Arizona are one of the most rapidly increasing in the United States. Phoenix and Tucson are near the top of the list of America's fastest warming cities. Air pollution, water scarcity, low river flows, higher temperatures, intensity of wildfires, and economic impact are just a few of the threats that we face locally. Science tells us that decades of evidence on climate change and our increasing access to information that CO2 emissions are still rising, still increasing every month. Climate change will affect certain groups of people more than others, depending on where they live and their ability to cope with the cultural, social, economic, and political issues. Climate change may soon be irreversible. And we are here because we understand that it is not just an environmental threat, it is a threat to our food and water supply, our national security, infrastructure, and our human health. NASA and NOAA tells us that in the last 5 years have been the warmest on record, and we know our triple-digit days have grown exponentially. Northern Arizona has steadily experienced an ever-increasing number of climate refugees that move north from Phoenix. In fact, the United Nations tells us that climate change is the most existential threat facing humanity today. Now, I've always considered myself an existentialist, okay, a person who analyzes the existence in an unfathomable universe. And we take responsibility for the good, the bad, the right or the wrong. That's the big picture. But the work, why do I work for climate change? It's because I have a 3.5-year-old grandson named Jack, and I want him to have a healthy planet. What will you tell your children was the reason to fail and leave them facing the ultimate chaos you knowingly brought upon them? Act as if you loved your children above all else. Develop and implement a climate action plan. Declare a climate emergency. That is what you all should do. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, last up is Steve Schlebs, and I'm probably butchering your name, and I apologize.
My name is Steve Schlebs, and I'm here, I live in the city of Sedona, by the way. I'm here to urge you all, first to say thank you, Mr. Mayor and Vice Mayor. I can hardly read your names. Vice Mayor and councilors, I appreciate the couple of minutes of your attention tonight. I'm here to encourage you to at least start thinking about having some sort of climate action and adaptation plan for the city of Cottonwood. What comes to mind is the old saying about think globally, act locally. This climate thing is a global problem, and it's really hard to comprehend what it is, but there are no global solutions to it. There are only a myriad of local solutions. And that means every person, every city, every government, every corporation and business, every nation around the world has to figure out some way to address this problem. So when we say climate action, what that means really is mitigation. And we're talking about mitigating the greenhouse gases that are causing this planetary warming that the scientists tell us is happening. Tens of thousands of research professionals whose life work it is to know what they're talking about or sounding the alarm. And it's really out of character for scientists to say anything like that. But they are. So, climate action is mitigation, adaptation is dealing with the consequences. And we're on the brink of some kind of a transition. The world must transition to sustainable energy or else. I mean, and so it can be a difficult transition, or we can make it less painful, less costly. Adaptation. The longer we put off mitigation, the more expensive and difficult and painful adaptation is going to be. This is not a political issue. It's not about left or right or conservative or Republican. It's about the science. It's about the laws of physics. It's about the laws of thermodynamics. More energy coming into a system than going out will cause the system to heat up, and that's exactly what we're seeing. So it's a long process. It's going to cost the city some money. There are ways the city could actually save money, like these electric lights are wasting energy. They could be LED lights. It's coming from coal or natural gas is where the energy is coming from, and that's got to stop. That's obvious. So you might tell you that just today, our mayor in Sedona announced that she is signing up our city, Sedona, with the Compact of Mayors, which is a national and international organization of cities that are trying to help each other figure out, each in their own unique ways, how to cooperate, share best practices, share methods and techniques for measuring and accounting for greenhouse gas emissions. And so you could probably call our sustainability manager if you wanted to up in Sedona. She'd be happy to talk to you, probably on city time or maybe on her own time, and give you some pointers. Well, I'm going to take too much more of your time. You get the idea. There's things you could do with your building code. You could put a provision in the building code for solar-ready roofs on all new houses. That wouldn't cost the city anything to do that. And also make sure that new house garages are pre-wired for electric cars. There are lots of little things the city could begin to do while you're thinking about putting together a plan. Well, I thank you for your time. I don't have too much left, and I'll be back. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. And as I said in the beginning, we are unable to comment, but I appreciate you all being in here this evening. Okay, next is approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of January 21st, 2020. I would motion to approve.
Second?
Okay, Mayor made the motion, Councilmember Naren seconded it. All in favor? Aye. Okay, minutes are approved. Then we go into the consent agenda next, and the consent agenda, these following items are considered to be routine and non-controversial by the council and will be approved by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or citizen so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence on the agenda. And this evening we have 6 items under the consent agenda. I'll read them out by title. If there's anyone in the audience that would like something pulled, please indicate so. And first item is liquor license application submitted by John McLaughlin, owner agent for Tantrum Wines, for a remote tasting room located at 918 North Main Street. Item 2 is special event liquor license application submitted by Laura Jones, applicant for Friends of the Verde River, for an event scheduled for April 23rd, 2020 at Dead Horse Ranch State Park located at 675 Dead Horse Ranch Road. Item 3, resolution numbers 30, 37, and 30, 39, reappointing Jim Money and Bill Wade to the city's airport commission. Item 4 is proposed purchase of a 2015 backhoe from Empire Cat for the utility department, including a waiver of the city's procurement policy. Item 5, acceptance of an easement from the Cottonwood Christian Assembly Church for the Mingus Avenue to Old Town Trail. And item 6, agreement with Circle K Stores, Inc. to abandon a city-owned alley and accept certain rights-of-way and easements along with other considerations. Is there any item that a member of the public or council would like to have pulled? Okay, do I hear a motion?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
Second?
Okay, Mayor made the motion, I seconded it first. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Or excuse me, Vice Mayor made the motion, I seconded it.
Yes.
You're on it, right? Okay. All right, consent agenda is approved, and if we could have a deputy clerk read resolutions number 3037 and 3039 by title only, please.
Resolution number 3037, a resolution of the mayor and city council of the city of Cottonwood, Arizona, appointing Jim Money, a member of the Cottonwood Airport Commission, and establishing his term of office. And resolution number 3039, a resolution of the mayor and city council of the city of Cottonwood, Arizona, appointing Bill Wade, a member of the Cottonwood Airport Commission, and establishing his term of office. Mr. Mayor.
Great, thank you. Okay, new business. The following items are for council discussion, consideration, and possible legal action. First item up is discussion, consideration, and possible first reading of ordinance number 673, amending section 404 of the zoning code by adding a new section, CC Tiny Homes.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Scott Ellis, Community Development Director. What we have here tonight is ordinance number 673, which is an amendment to section 404 of our zoning ordinance to add section CC regarding tiny homes. Right now, we don't have anything in our zoning code that addresses a tiny home and where they can go and what zoning districts you can put them in, what properties you can put them on. The most we have is no minimum to build a house. We don't have a minimum square footage that you have to meet. However, you do have to meet all building codes. So if you go too small, you're not going to be able to meet certain building codes. This will allow you to do so. There's also an appendix with the building codes that the city has adopted last year that incorporates tiny homes in it as well. After doing research, staff has found that not a lot of cities yet have tiny homes ordinances, especially around here, but it is something that is being more looked at. Council did direct staff at a work session in 2018 to look at adopting the tiny homes ordinance, so that's what's before you tonight. The Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval at their meeting in January to council after lengthy discussion on it. I can answer any questions you have, any concerns.
If you don't mind, can you go into some of the detail about what the Planning and Zoning Commission discussed?
Yes, most of them were on board with it. We did have one vote, no. His concern was allowing tiny homes on certain, mostly single-family residential properties in certain neighborhoods, bringing down the property value. Thinking that a tiny home located in any subdivision or just on any property where you may have larger homes would not look right and would not fit in with what's going on there.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question? Mr. Ellis, there's currently no limit, though, on the size small.
There is not.
So they could build one now, currently.
As long as they met all building codes, yes, they could build one that's potentially as tiny as a tiny home, as long as it meets all building codes.
And what aspect of the building code prevents them from doing so? You said in the beginning of your presentation that
A lot of tiny homes you'll see have lofts, and they try to make use of as much space as they can. And when you have stairs and trying to get to an upper level on any type of home, you have to have certain angle, certain number of steps. And these building codes, especially the new appendix in the building code regarding tiny homes, kind of relaxes that a little bit, kind of lets them do a little modification on what would normally be required. So if you go too small, then that you wouldn't be able to meet those requirements.
got it.
Are those requirements not for the purpose of health and safety?
Yes, they are. Building codes are for life safety.
So then if somebody wants to build a smaller code, we're willing to push away those health and safety codes and bring in something that's not as healthy and safe.
The appendix for the International Building Code, they do extreme in-depth discussions and research on what they approve. So this is part of what we adopted when we adopted that new building code with that appendix. So there's a lot of research and discussion behind it before they even move forward. I know on my research, before they put it as part, it was only recently put in as part of the International Building Code in 2018.
Okay.
Even before that, it took them, I think, 2 or 3 years to discuss it amongst themselves and come up with something that they felt would work and was still safe.
Okay, I mean, it just kind of bothers me a little bit that you'll make special exception on something over here that somebody that builds a larger house, you know, it kind of seems unfair.
I understand what you're saying. It would be subject to the International Building Code. We're not looking to take away anything ourselves. It's just what the building codes have.
Okay, so the building code compromises on that?
Yes.
Okay.
Ms. Wilden?
I know the county has a maximum build of 750 square feet. Is that, what are you thinking, or what might be the rules for minimum and maximum?
We do define that, and these definitions come from what's standard across the industry and what would be considered a tiny home. So it is something that is smaller than 400 square feet, but not smaller than 200 square feet. If that's the industry standard for tiny homes, and then not smaller than 160 square feet if built on a trailer. So you have
if
those
built on a
different
trailer.
sizes. Yeah, so some tiny homes are considered tiny homes on trailers or tiny homes on wheels. And if they're registered through ADOT vehicle registration, we look at them as an RV. You can't just go put them down somewhere. If it's site-built, then you can have anywhere from 200 to 400 square feet and be considered a tiny home, where that new appendix in the building code would apply. If you go any bigger than 400 square feet, then the standard building code applies. So you don't get those relaxations in there.
So I've got another question on C2. It says, tiny homes built on trailers where the suspension and axle components have been removed and the chassis permanently attached on an approved foundation shall be permitted in the R1, R2, R3, and R4 zones. Is R1 through R4 for single-family site-built homes only?
No,
So-
all of those zones do allow single-family homes.
Does it allow manufactured homes?
No, just R4.
Okay.
R2 will allow a manufactured home with a conditional use permit if it meets that same requirement that you see there, if it's permanently attached on an approved foundation and it's not elevated, there's no skirting, it's got to be kind of flush with the foundation. And that's the only way a manufactured home would be allowed in R2.
And just on R2, not R1, 3, and 4?
A manufactured home would be allowed in R4, yes. R1 and R3, no.
Okay, but so then on R1 and R3, you're not going to allow me to bring in a manufactured home and set it on a foundation,
Correct.
ground set, but you'll allow me to bring a tiny home in and do the same thing?
Yes.
Again, it just doesn't seem to,
No, I understand where you're going with that. So what we're looking at in that section is if it's put on a permanent foundation, basically you're not able to just come in and move it. I mean, you can move any building with expense and engineering and that, but the goal of this is to not just be able to come in and easily move it like you can with a manufactured home that would be in a manufactured home subdivision.
no, manufactured home that's brought in and ground set on a foundation is not easily moved. In fact, they typically
Right.
don't do that.
Right, but one that's in a manufactured home part could be more easily moved than one that's on a foundation.
Okay. Sounds like we're making special exceptions for the tiny homes. It just looks that way.
So I know this is somewhat new, you know, this concept, but what does staff anticipate as far as, you know, where a tiny home would most likely reside in which zoning classification?
Over the last few years, staff has got several, I want to almost say frequent inquiries on tiny homes and where they can go. We probably get every month or two, somebody wondering, can a tiny home go here? Can a tiny home go there? Usually it's scattered individual lots within the city, no one area in particular. We've had requests down here in Old Town. We've had some off of Mingus, on the east side of Mingus as you're heading out of town. Some of those A.R. zones. We have had them in the middle of residential zones throughout the city that people just inquire, can I put a tiny home here? Just kind of infill lots that are vacant right now. We haven't had any requests in new subdivisions or even a tiny home subdivision. You'll see that in some communities that people have tried to bring in tiny home subdivisions. But we have not had that inquiry yet.
But if it's in an R1, they're only allowed to have one tiny home on it.
Correct. If you do multifamily in the R2, R3, or R4, we have a definition of what a multifamily dwelling is, and it's basically the buildings have to be connected, almost like a duplex. You have one wall separating the two units. The same would apply for tiny homes going into a multifamily zoning district. You wouldn't be able to set one here and one over here, one over here. You'd have to connect them in the way that we define a multifamily dwelling.
So then if somebody did want to do, say, a tiny home village of sorts, or they had a lot where they wanted to, you know, place 3, 4, 5, 6 of these tiny homes, that would require some sort of conditional use permit or a PAD or something that would come back before a public body for a lot of discussion and public input.
Yeah, if they didn't meet the, Mr. Mayor, if they didn't meet the multifamily requirements to do that, and they wanted to do it a different way, we'd look at more than likely a PAD rezone to accommodate that, which would be public hearings, neighborhood meetings, notifications through the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council as well.
Okay. And our neighboring community of Camp Verde, what have they done?
I'm not aware, when I did the research of them having any, they didn't have anything on the books specifically for tiny homes that addressed it.
Okay.
The closest jurisdiction that did was Coconino County.
Oh, okay.
And what they started, when they started, seemed to have been working for them.
But Camp Verde was working on something, they just haven't gotten it before their council.
Not that, and I've reached out to them a few times on it,
Okay.
and not anything that they provided me.
Okay.
I find this very interesting. I did try to do a little bit of research on it, and positives and negatives in communities that have done it, and there's just nothing out there.
Yeah, there's not a lot.
There's not.
And again, there's not a lot of communities, especially near us, that have
Yeah.
incorporated something like
I
that.
mean, I know why this is being brought up, and it's a good idea, it sounds good. And what I see here is with the restrictions you're putting on and with requiring people to put sprinklers in site-built ones and considering ones that are built on trailers, which I think is the majority, that's what people think. They're gonna get this trailer, they're gonna put it somewhere, and they're gonna move around at their convenience, that's not gonna work out. It's a fad, and I think it's a popular fad and everybody's into this. But, and what I see you're requiring here, I just don't really see where we're going to have a problem with it, where there's going to be a lot of people really being able to comply with all of this. I don't like the idea of allowing somebody to bring a tiny home put in, and I don't know whether there's, like manufactured home, built 1976 or later, has got certain building statutes that they have to comply with. Are these tiny homes going to be brought in and set on foundations? Are they going to have that same certification?
So right now, the state is actually what oversees manufactured homes, the state of Arizona, not anything that we do. And I want to kind of hit on your sprinkler comment, if I could. We're trying to look at if a tiny home is brought in similar to what a manufactured home would be, we treat it the same. We, by state law, cannot require sprinklers in a manufactured home.
Right, I saw that.
So we're looking at the same with a tiny home that would be considered that same type of home. And then you have the site-built or the ones that are on a permanent foundation that are treated like a stick-built home would then be required to have sprinklers. But again, we don't have jurisdiction over manufactured homes as far as their certifications and what is considered approved. The state provides that to us, and then we can issue our permits off of that.
So, okay, so they'll be required to bring a tiny home in that meets those standards?
If it's considered a manufactured home, yes.
Okay, because most of them are kind of home-built.
Some of them can be.
Okay.
Mr. Holst, did you have something you wanted to say?
I'm curious, if I read this correctly, we would be saying that you could put one of these tiny homes in a R1 district?
If it met the requirements, yes.
So in our neighborhood where we have some vacant lots that have been vacant for years, somebody comes along and buys a lot and sticks one of those on it, everybody's property values drop tremendously because you've got this little piece of what most people would consider some type of recreational vehicle stuck on a lot.
We tried to, Mr. Council Member, we did try to address making sure that if it is treated like an RV, if it's registered with the state, then it's treated like that, and you can't just place that.
No, I understand.
If it is a home, yes, then you would be able to if you met these requirements.
I think I know what you mean. I mean, if there's two lots in your neighborhood, somebody brings a tiny home in and puts it on a ground set, puts it on a foundation, really, then that means I can buy that other lot, and I can bring a 1,700 square foot manufactured home and put it on a foundation,
Yeah, that's what I'm
which
asking.
is not allowed.
That's my concerns. You're devaluing an existing neighborhood if you allow these things to come in on a infill basis. You know, the people that own these lots invest in them, figuring someday they'll sell them and make money, or they'll build on them, whichever their choice is. But if we go away from our standard for an R1, where we say you have to have a minimum of 750 square feet to build a home there, and they come in and put this little 200 square foot home in the middle of the lot, that devalues the whole neighborhood. Because if I'm looking to buy a home and I tell Mike, I want to buy a home in this neighborhood, and we're driving around and I see this little home there, and I understand, you know, they can be kind of pretty, but I don't think increase the value, because when you go to sell your property, they do an evaluation of what the value of other homes in the neighborhood are. Well, that little home is worth probably a quarter of what a stick-built 17, 1,800, 2,000 square foot home is worth. And that devalues those other homes in that particular location, because that's what they look at. They say, well, this one only sold for 70,000, and you're wanting 250 to 350,000 for your home, and they're saying, well, yeah, but the other one that sold here was only 70,000, and that's my concern.
And that was a concern of one of our planning commission members, but again, we don't have a minimum requirement on the size of home.
Right.
You could build as small as you can, as long as you meet building codes.
And that's what concerns me, is that if they want to go out and do a PAD, that's fine. I don't have a problem, because then the whole neighborhood is comparable. But if they want to come in and buy a lot in a neighborhood where the neighborhood is already established, and we have some vacant lots that haven't been built on and aren't presently for sale, then they're going to devalue that neighborhood, because their value is going to be factored in when you go to sell or you go to buy. And the property owner then takes a beating, because his property value has been devalued by this tiny home.
Mr. Mayor, can I just, I want to make sure we're clear. You could currently go into that vacant lot and build a 300-square home, single story, right now, under current rules. So we're actually creating a system to ensure there is some quality and some rules followed by creating a tiny home versus allowing a homeowner to come in. If they meet all the other building requirements, they could build a 500-square-foot home, a 700-square-foot home. Currently, no stairs, a lot of other rules I'll have to follow. It might be hard, but they could do it now, because we don't have a minimum square footage requirement in R1. Scott, is that correct?
Correct.
Correct. So what we're actually doing is starting to create some parameters that if you are going to put a small home on there, you've got to be up to our building code, which includes tiny homes. And then the other part of what we're trying to do, and again, this is council's decision, is create infill opportunities. So those two lots that are sitting vacant, we're actually trying to encourage a home to go on there to help with our workforce housing. So I'll trust the realtor in the group to tell us about the value of the home, but one of the goals is to try to create ways to encourage people to build on those vacant lots. Again, it may not be the right for R1 the commissioner was adamantly against, in R1, so it's not uncommon, but that's kind of why we're here, is to discuss this in our efforts to help infill with workforce housing.
Well, I can clarify that a little bit. And I realize there's no size limit other than the codes on building a site-built small home. You can go and build any size you want, and that's fine. I think economics is going to prevent us from seeing anything like that happen. What I'm concerned about is the manufactured home that's built on a frame and has axles and wheels and is towed by a vehicle in, and then either set on piers or ground set on a foundation. That's still a manufactured home, whether it's 350 square foot or whether it's 2,100 square foot brought in two pieces and put together. That's a manufactured home. And we have properties that aren't zoned for those, but you're going to make an exception and say if it's small enough, we're going to allow you to do it. That's what I'm hearing, I think.
Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, do you want us to create the same rules? And if so, which direction? The tiny home direction where it's allowed, or the current rules where it's not allowed? Scott, am I asking this correctly?
I think what he's saying is right now, with what we have, is going to allow it where it's not allowed for manufactured home. And that's.
So do you want to allow it?
I think the reason why we're discussing this at all in general is just that there's obviously market demand for it. I don't think that market demand is I don't think we're going to see a proliferation of tiny homes in R1 zoning lots unless they're smaller lots in general, like in the Old Town area where it just kind of makes more sense. But I do understand your concern about the potential or the appearance that it may devalue property, but unless I'm incorrect, it's based off square footage.
No, it's, if you have manufactured homes have a whole different value than site-built homes, completely different. Personally, I'm just opposed to making an exception for somebody to put a manufactured home on a property that's not zoned for it. I mean, no matter what size it is. I don't want you bringing in a 2,100 square foot manufactured home, put it in next to my site-built house, and then I don't want you bringing in a 400 square foot manufactured home and put it in next to my site-built house. If that zoning was done for a purpose, and somebody moves in and they understand that zoning is the way it is, so they buy knowing that their value is going to be protected by that zoning, and by changing it midstream, you are affecting a lot of people's neighborhood that way.
Mr. Mayor, can I throw one more wrench into the conversation? Because we'll come back, we can go back and try again, but I do want to, that the neighborhoods that are being discussed might be devalued by a manufactured home, but where we've seen the requests, a manufactured home would improve the value of the neighborhood. We actually had a significant issue with a person who bought a piece of property and he wanted to put a manufactured home, thought he could put it there. He couldn't, and it created a backlash because it was not economically feasible to fix the one that was currently there. There were a lot of issues. So I don't know if there's a way to pick and choose how we do that, but I can tell you that there are some neighborhoods that might be improved with a manufactured home.
And I understand both your gentlemen's concern, I think, and I understand it, but I feel like, again, there's a market demand. I don't think it's in the neighborhoods that you're describing. And I've read this through and through, and I think it's an extremely balanced approach to trying to create the environment where folks can place tiny homes or build tiny homes here. And I'm trying hard to find where the pitfalls are, because I think you've thought it through. And we know there's a demand. I'd hate to overly restrict it in the beginning if we're just not going to see it.
Practically speaking, I think this is great, and I think it's fine. And if you want to bring in a tiny home, put it on a manufactured home zone lot, that's great. And I think you're right. I think economically, we're not going to see the issue Doug's talking about. But I don't want to leave the door open for that to happen. So I don't think it's going to happen, but yet if we allow it, it could happen, and that's going to cause a problem. I think basically the only thing we're sticking on is those two site-built zonings, just saying no manufactured tiny homes. Somebody wants to come along and pour a foundation and bring the 2x6s out and build a 400 square foot house on that's fine. Again, I don't think it's going to happen. But I don't think we should open up any manufactured homes to lots that are zoned not manufactured.
So to understand what you're saying, Mr. Vice Mayor, is if you get a site, build it, follow these regulations. If it comes in on a trailer, just like a manufactured home, now you're restricted to the R4 in MH zone that would allow that. And it's either or, that's all you get.
Absolutely. Now, I don't know, it's just a question, I'm curious. Does Cottonwood allow modular homes?
We have had that discussion multiple times in interpretation, and based on definitions, we would consider like a factory-built building, and even perhaps a modular home could go into an R1 zone.
And I would agree. The county doesn't allow it. There's a couple out there, and I've seen them, but yeah, a modular home is not a manufactured home. It
Right.
comes in, it's built, it's actually stronger than a site-built home, and it comes in on a trailer and is picked up and set in place.
And that's been our interpretation over the years. We have had that question a couple times, not frequent by any means, and that has been what we have concluded, that yes, you can do it in where a site-built single-family home would be
Okay,
allowed.
just curious, that made me think about that, which I agree with you, it should be allowed.
So again, I just want to make it clear in my mind, you probably already told me, but in the requests that have come in which zoning districts typically do those requests come in for?
It's been a variety of them, Mr. Mayor. It's been some in basically all the zones you see listed here are 1 through 4. A lot of, I would say, we've probably seen most of them in R2 and R3 zone.
Okay.
especially down here in Old Town. You have a lot of the R2 when you get into the neighborhoods past the commercial residential zone. Yeah, we've seen most of them have come in down in that area, with few of them, like I said, in other areas of town,
Right.
basically across all these zoning districts.
Okay. Well, I think it's important that we do try to allow for the market demand, especially when it comes to workforce housing. I think, any way we can help make a dent in that is important. And I am a proponent of tiny homes before they called them tiny homes. I know that it is a fad, but I think it's I think it's a fad that we've seen before. I mean, throughout history, it's not. Clarkdale is an example, not quite teeny tiny, but like you're proposing here. But we used to live in smaller homes. I think the trend is going back toward living in smaller homes. It's we have the climate change folks here with us this evening who obviously understand that a smaller home is a more efficient home. It costs less to heat and cool, so it's economic benefit too to the folks who live in it. I could go on for a while, but I'm curious to how we can kind of correct your concerns, before we move forward with something. If maybe staff can kind of take a look at that. And, does that seem agreeable to you?
Agreed. And I think that the wave of the future, or whatever, and Yava by counting having that one class regarding different types of construction, I think that's going to be a trend as well. I mean, it just makes sense. So I think it's something we need to think about.
Do you share some of the concerns, sorry to interrupt, with the R1 zone?
I do.
Okay.
So it's R1 and R3 that are site build only, just for my notes.
Correct. So
Okay.
just to kind of clarify, the R2 zone, and I'm sorry, this goes back many years ago, so I don't know the reasons. It, for some reason, does allow a manufactured home with a conditional use permit if it's permanently set on a foundation, which is not typical for a zone like that I've seen. So somewhere in the past, they decided to put that in there. But it is not in the R1 zone, it is not in the R3 zone as well. So for whatever reason, they decided R2, they wanted to put that there.
And that's fine, I mean, really, that's my only concern. Other than that, I'm okay with it. Somebody wants to jump through those hoops and live in a little house, and make a go of it, that's fine. I just want to protect those in the R1 and R3.
Right.
I would concur with Mike on that.
Same.
Anything from Councilmember Hodeggy or Naren? Okay. But you're agreeable to maybe taking a second look at the modifications of the R1 zone?
Yes.
Okay.
And Mr. Mayor, Council, one thing, just so we can extract some clear direction from you is as we go back and rethink this, what the council seems to be saying is they want to see parity, however we structure this, but you want to see some parity between site-built homes and manufactured homes, under what conditions and where they're permitted.
Correct.
And Mr. Mayor, the last piece, this would be a substantial change, so we'll have to go back through the process. So we'll take this back to P&Z, and so we'll try to get the first reading back to you probably in late March, maybe the second meeting in March, one meeting in February, and then the second meeting in March, maybe the first? Am I pushing it?
Yeah,
All right, we'll get it back to you
We
soon.
can't get it back to P&Z until March.
Oh,
So
okay.
you're looking at probably early April for the
Okay.
first reading?
Fair.
Okay. It is coming back to us, though, so that's the important thing.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right, so you have your direction and,
Yes,
okay.
Scott?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Very good, thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, second item under new business is ordinance number 674, amending section 418, light commercial, 418C, to allow the keeping of livestock within the C1 zone as a conditional use under certain circumstances, and this is the first reading.
Again, thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Ordinance number 673 is an amendment to,
Yeah.
Ordinance 674 is an amendment to Section 418, or C1 Light Commercial. This is to allow livestock in that zoning district on certain properties that meet certain sizes under specific requirements. The reason we're looking at doing this is we've noticed that some fringe properties in the city that border the county have historically had cattle run on them. And it also is with our AR zones. We have a lot of AR zone properties on the fringe of the city that have historically had cattle run on them. Right now, the AR zones do allow cattle, or livestock, sorry, not just cattle, but any livestock, horses, sheep, pigs, goats. So we're looking to allow the same thing on those C1 fringe properties that are certain size. So you're not gonna, with a conditional use permit, which would be approved by the Planning Commission, so you're not gonna see a standalone C1 parcel in the middle of town have cattle start running on it, or horses, or sheep, or anything else. So we did take some precautions to ensure that this stays mostly on the fringe with those properties that border the county. And somebody's not gonna come into Old Town and start running livestock. This was unanimously approved, recommended for approval by the Planning Commission at their January meeting.
All right.
Any questions, concerns, comments?
I think it'd be kind of fun to see them run those things.
Yeah, really. Well, I do have one question, just for my own knowledge. What happened to the peacocks downtown, in Old Town? Were you here then?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Wilden, stop by my house. They still run free sometimes in my neighborhood, so.
Yeah, they were speed deterrents, but they did their job
Yeah, really.
too well. Yeah, it sounds good. I think we're bring it back for a second reading.
Okay.
Yeah.
It will come back at the 18th. I think that's the Tuesday, yeah.
All right.
Come back
See
to
you
you on the
then.
18th. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Clerk, please read ordinance number 674 by title only.
Ordinance number 674, an ordinance of the mayor and city council of the city of Cottonwood, Yavapai County, Arizona, amending section 418 C1 zone, light commercial of the zoning ordinance. Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Third item tonight, under new business, reclassification of a wastewater operator 1 position to a wastewater operator 2 position. Evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Amanda Wilbur, the HR Director. Under new leadership of the Utility Department, specifically in the wastewater division, staff has a long-term plan to increase the certification levels obtained by staff. Part of this plan will be presented in the upcoming budget changes for the upcoming fiscal year. However, we've been lucky enough to have one of our wastewater trainees test directly into a grade 2 certification. So tonight we're requesting to reclassify one of our operator 1 positions into an operator 2 position to be able to place this employee into that position. This change would help further our long-term goals and the planning for the wastewater department. And we can fund this change out of the salary savings within the wastewater department that we've seen so far this year through several vacancies.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
our request is to make that reclassification change, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Do we have any questions? No? I think it's great you are thinking ahead on getting a plan in place so you get the right people and the right locations for succession and everything else. So I think it's good. Do you hear a motion?
I'll make a motion. I move to approve the proposed reclassification of a wastewater operator 1 to a wastewater operator 2 position as recommended by staff.
Second.
Okay, Vice Mayor made the motion and Councilmember Holst seconded it. If we could have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Hulse,
Aye, yes?
Councilmember Hauge,
Yes.
Councilmember Nieren,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilden,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Matthews.
Yes?
Mayor Linsky,
Yes.
and motion carried.
All right, very good. All right, next is proposed reclassification of the Economic Development Director position, range 31, to a Tourism and Economic Development Director position, range 29.
Good evening again. As many of you know, Richard Faust, our current Economic Development Director, is retiring in mid-March. So with this upcoming vacancy, we have evaluated this position and the Economic Development Department as a whole, and we are recommending a change from an Economic Development Director to a tourism and economic development director, and lowering the positions range from a 31 to a 29. Integrating a tourism focus will help staff focus on council's strategic initiatives to facilitate economic growth and promote quality of life. This change will also result in a significant salary savings beginning in the next fiscal year. So staff is requesting this reclassification, and I'm available for any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Wilbur?
Just any idea when this might happen?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Wilden, tomorrow if you approve it tonight.
I mean, the hiring, the replacement, whatever.
So he is retiring March 14th, and we'll be announcing a celebration, much to his, where's he at?
Yeah.
Much to his unhappiness back there. He's done such a fantastic job stepping into this role. 30 years, 29 and a half years with the city. Impressive. Anyway, we're going to finish the job description, tighten that up, and soon we'll get that job description out on the road, or the job opening out on the road. And I hope to have someone hired no later than early March, so that we can have a little bit of overlap. If the person is not from the community, then we would be able to, he could make some introductions, set up some connections and those kinds of things. But the sooner the better, so that we can move ahead. Again, we're not expecting any salary savings anyway until after the first of the year because of the way our system works with payouts and vacation and sick and all that kind of stuff. But technically, we're not filling, so Cindy Gray resigned. She was the other person in the Business Assistance Center. So we won't be filling that position. So we'll have that savings there through the end of the year until we decide what we're going to do with that position. So there's technically a little salary savings there. But that happened after this was already moving along. But long answer to soon.
Okay. Does soon satisfy you?
It's soon. March, yes.
Well, I did get the evil eye, so I...
Almost ready.
And I'm just assuming that we're going to be doing a pretty robust, hopefully, national
Yes.
search to try to find a good fit for
Yes.
Cottonwood, the city we all love. Okay. All right. Any questions, comments?
I think it's great.
Yes.
Thank you.
I think she said it, but I want to emphasize, Mr. Mayor and Council, that this is following one of your strategic initiatives also to consolidate positions and reduce overall compensation part of the budget by lowering it 2 grades. We still think we should be able to attract a highly qualified candidate, but positions that report to me are not exempt from this demand to lower costs. And so we made an attempt to put it in a range that we think we can still hire somebody, but yet still meet the other strategic initiative to keep costs down.
Certainly. No, definitely with the tourism being part of their job description, I think it's going to help us achieve a lot of our goals through our plans. So thank you. And it's not necessarily the time and place, but thanks to Richard Faust for all your years of service.
Yes, done a great job.
Okay, then I would go ahead and move to approve the proposed reclassification of the Economic Development Director position to a Tourism and Economic Development Director position at range 29 as recommended.
Second?
Okay, Mayor made the motion, Councilmember Wilden seconded it. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Hulse,
Yes?
Councilmember Hauge,
Yes.
Councilmember Narian,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilden,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Matthews.
Yes.
Mayor Linsky,
Yes.
and motion carries.
Okay, thank you. I move we pay the claims and adjustments.
Second.
Okay, Mayor made the motion, Councilmember Narian seconded it. All in favor?
Aye. Move to adjourn?
Second.
All right, Councilmember Narian made the motion, Vice Mayor seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.